and we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup.
And
welcome back.
Thanks to Chris Cooper for filling in last week. Nice to be back.
Big thanks to Chris. And did you have a good time in London?
I did indeed. Thank you very much. And I will tell you all about the theater there later in the show. But and also a movie from Britain that you can see. But we start out, I come home and in a scathing decision, the U.S. 7th Circuit out of Chicago upholds decisions overturning bans on same-sex marriage in Indiana and Wisconsin.
It's fun, and we're going to quote from it. It also seems that the 9th Circuit will strike down the bans on same-sex marriage in Nevada and Idaho.
A town in Mississippi is the first to codify same-sex partner benefits for the state. The state, not for the state.
And a heartwarming story, it's never too late. In Iowa, a lesbian couple in their 90s gets married after 72 years together.
Now, there were some elections this past week, some primaries, and in Massachusetts, out candidates have been nominated by the Democrats to be Attorney General and Lieutenant Governor.
Very interesting story. And a really depressing story. A British man pretended to be gay to get close to women so he could rape them.
Gambia's laws have gotten even more anti-gay this week.
And we've told you about the high price for the Hep C drug. Well, ACT UP and others protested at a conference that Gilead was having against the high price.
And there is a new outbreak of meningitis that's hitting gay men in New York. 3 have gotten it.
We'll talk about the passing of Joan Rivers. Love her, me, or hate her, Andy.
Mixed.
She had a big gay following and some credentials.
I did laugh at some of those jokes. And I'm going to review, as I said, I'm going to review theater and this movie Pride, which is coming to you.
And the Kennedy Center honors will finally go to an out lesbian for the first time this fall.
But I think we buried the headline this week.
Which is?
Because corporations have written to the Supreme Court saying, you need to settle this same-sex marriage stuff because it's burdening our business. I think we're going to get a unanimous decision from the Supreme Court based on that.
I could top that.
Okay.
The Mormons and the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops wrote to the Supreme Court asking them to settle the marriage case. More on that in a moment. Let's do the latest decision, which came out of the 7th Circuit, a 3-0 decision by the Court of Appeals there.
This is Indiana and Wisconsin cases, and the hero of the guy who wrote the decision is this Reagan appointee named Richard Posner. Who had quite a few, as I said, scathing things to say.
Well, he called it irrational discrimination. He said the state argument was so full of holes it can't be taken seriously. Here's their argument. If you are old and can't have children, you can marry your first cousin.
Right.
But if you're gay and can't have children, you can't get married.
Right. And he said, you know, he said one of the states argued that heterosexuals get drunk and pregnant producing unwanted children. Their reward is to be able to marry. Homosexual couples do not produce unwanted children. Their reward is to be denied the right to marry. Go figure. He wrote that.
He said homosexuals are among the most stigmatized, misunderstood, and discriminated against minorities in the history of the world.
He also called homosexuality, perhaps controversially, an immutable characteristic. Some of our own people don't agree with that. I do. And not a voluntary condition.
Which was a major part of his decision. He also, one of the states at least had made the argument that, the voters have to be able to decide. The voters voted against same-sex marriage, and we must respect their decision. And Posner said, minorities trampled on by the democratic process of voting out their rights have recourse to the courts. The recourse is called constitutional law.
And he also said, you raised the issue of tradition. This is traditional. And he said there are good traditions and bad traditions.
Yeah.
And he quoted Scalia's dissent in the Windsor case. In the Lawrence case, which was the sodomy case, where Scalia said the court has essentially granted a constitutional right to same-sex marriage. You're right, Justice Scalia. You did.
Now, one of the things he addressed, unlike other decisions, was the old Baker v. Nelson decision from
1972,
Yes.
Minnesota, where the Supreme Court just said, we don't see a federal issue here, so we're not, but they didn't take the case. For want of a federal issue.
Yes, but the same-sex marriage had been denied by the lower court,
Yes.
so they were allowing that to stand. So a lot of the right wing has argued that that's the controlling law on same-sex marriage, and that all these courts are just running off in the wrong direction because they're not respecting Baker v. Nelson. Well, Posner addressed that directly and said that in fact, that decision is no longer authoritative, and the superseding decisions in Evans v. Romer and the Lawrence decision and the Doma decision, the Windsor decision, have made it clear that Baker does not apply.
Sure.
But as someone pointed out this week, which I thought was interesting, was we've had these decisions now in 3 courts of appeals, in the 4th, 7th, and 10th circuits in our favor, in Virginia, Wisconsin and Indiana, Utah, and Oklahoma. And in the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd districts, marriage is legal everywhere. That's basically the Northeast. And these decisions are piling up in our favor. And people are a little worried that if we get unanimous decisions, the Supreme Court will never take it.
Well, they don't have to if we get all positive decisions.
Yeah, although it's still, we yearn for some Supreme Court stamp of approval.
It's likely, though.
But someone suggested, and I thought this was interesting, that in fact Baker gives them an excuse to take marriage cases, even if the district courts the circuit courts are now unanimous, because it can be seen as a previous decision that contradicts it.
We may hear about this within this month, about whether the Supreme Court takes any cases related to this.
They could. Now,
because they're being asked by an awful lot of people to take them.
Well, they come back to the court after a summer vacation this month. They announce by the end of the month what cases they are considering, and then they announce whether or not they're actually taking cases. Now, a year ago, they didn't announce they were taking the Windsor case until the end of the year, and they could wait until then and still have a decision by next June, but they're on their own timetable. They can do whatever they want.
Sounds like they're playing hard to get.
But 32 states have now asked the Supreme Court to decide marriage cases on both sides, some for, some against. 30 major corporations have asked the Supreme Court to take the case and to equalize laws around the country. The Mormons, the Catholic bishops, the evangelicals, the Baptists, and the Lutherans filed a brief together asking the Supreme Court to decide marriage.
Ecumenism, it's called.
I thought it was ecumenism.
Let's call the whole thing off.
Okay. And Indiana and Wisconsin, out of this last Seventh Circuit case, have appealed it to the Supreme Court.
It's ecumenical and it's ecumenism, I think. But check me on that.
Posner, what's that?
All right. All right. And then in the Ninth Circuit, which we've already gotten a favorable decision out of, the 3-judge panel there, all seeming to be in our favor, heard the Idaho and Nevada cases and
Nevada. We get yelled at when we don't say Nevada.
Nevada. And appeared that they're very much poised to strike down the bans there. All 3 have joined gay rights positions in the past. They agreed that heightened scrutiny applies, and Judge Berzon, I hope I'm saying her name right, raised the issue of sex discrimination, and she said Idaho's ban was also scapegoating the kids of gay parents.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's what Posner said, too. Now, there have also been there's some action in the Fifth Circuit, which is Texas, Louisiana, and Arkansas, We got a favorable decision from a federal judge in Texas. That case has been appealed to the Court of Appeals there. Some briefs were filed this week on that. They haven't scheduled oral arguments yet. Meanwhile, we got the bad decision in Louisiana. There was a big protest this last weekend in the French Quarter against the federal judge who ruled against us in that case. But his decision, as I said last week, was so ridiculous that it's hard to believe anyone's going to
There are some hostile judges there.
Sure.
The Indiana Attorney General, even though they lost, is saying to the Supreme Court, we're not discriminating against homosexuals who often do marry members of the opposite sex.
Isn't that a great system to be promoting? Gay people marrying members of the opposite sex.
And 80 Utah legislatures told the Supreme Court it will lead to polygamy and incestuous marriages.
Don't hold your breath. A slight wrinkle in one of the Florida decisions, a lesbian couple who got a civil union in Vermont applied to have it dissolved in Florida, and the state had refused on the grounds that they didn't recognize the relationship in the first place legally. And a Fort Lauderdale judge had ruled in their favor, but now he has vacated his ruling because he says the state was not given the legally required notice in the case.
Take note of this. You've got to send a registered or certified letter if you want to do it properly. This is the reason.
Yes, but they can apply again for their divorce or legal separation.
All right. Winston-Salem, North Carolina is going to recognize all married couples for health benefits, including same-sex married couples.
City employees.
Yeah. Well, for the purpose of their giving health benefits.
Yes, yes. And similarly, in Starkville, Mississippi, the city council there voted unanimously, 7-0, to supply medical benefits to the same-sex partners of city employees.
And that's a first in that state.
Yeah.
We have a, let's see, we have a couple, we have a couple of, how about...
Well, let's celebrate in Iowa the marriage of Vivian Boyack and Alice Dubes, seated there, 90 and 91, actually 91 on the left, 90 on the right. They have been together for 72 years, and they finally got married.
They have traveled to all 50 states and England twice and said, we've had a good time. So it's never too late to start they said it's never too late to start a new chapter in life.
And Neil Patrick Harris and his longtime partner David Burka traveled to Italy to get married. And Elton John, ecumenical in his marriage performances, you may remember he performed for Rush Limbaugh at his latest wedding. Elton John performed.
And in New York, the first out gay judge on a federal bench, there have been lesbians, Judge Paul Oetken. All right, that's his name.
It's pronunciation day at Gay USA.
He married his partner.
Oetken, I think.
Yeah, his partner, Mackie.
And still to be anticipated, the upcoming marriage of Martina Navratilova and Julia Lemegova.
Yep.
They have been together for several years. Martina proposed on the Jumbotron at the U.S. Open.
I don't recommend this method.
I don't either, but Julia is a former Russian beauty queen. She was the last Miss USSR and runner-up in the Miss Universe pageant.
And then there's...
but they have been together for 6 or 7 years.
You got any more wedding announcements?
No.
Well, then there's Missouri, where at Cor Jesu Girls Catholic High School in Afton, they fired...
The Heart of Jesus.
They fired 2 teachers, Olivia Reichert and Christina Gambaro, because they're both teachers there, because they took out a mortgage together, which is a violation of the Levitical Code. They had been married in New York. Alumni, or we say alumni now? Alumni of the school created a Facebook page to support them and got 2,000 supporters.
Yeah, but
they're out.
They are, and you've always approved of the Catholics sticking to doctrine. Approved? To reveal what their real doctrine is.
Oh, yeah.
to shrink the church.
Well, they want to be hypocritical as far as they can.
Yeah.
But that marriage seems to put them on the spot.
Yeah, that marriage certificate. And the marriage certificates in Santa Fe, New Mexico, over the last year since they legalized same-sex marriage, have doubled. The number of marriages have doubled, and just over half of them, 55%, are same-sex marriages.
Right. In Illinois, anti-gay Cardinal Francis George met with Colin Collette, who was the gay guy who was fired as the music director of a suburban Holy Family church there in Inverness for becoming engaged to a same-sex partner. This is sort of the love is strange plot. But Collette, he spoke afterwards, and he called the Cardinal's response humbling. He prayed with me. Now, his supporters held a vigil outside the church on Sunday, but Collette said the Cardinal is an incredibly busy man and not well. Amen to that.
All right, switching to the more secular, the U.S. House Committee on Veterans Affairs met this week to consider a proposed bill that would equalize veterans benefits for the same-sex spouses of veterans, because the federal government currently interprets the law as you can only get the benefits if you're living in a state where your marriage is legally recognized. And this proposed bill would make the benefits portable around the country. Right. And if you're legally married, you would get the benefits no matter where you live.
And we have to get a bill passed to do this, huh?
There's some question about that. I think there is a lawsuit ongoing too, but if the law is as the federal government reads it currently, or as the Defense Department reads it, then yes, we do have to get a bill passed. And we lost in the House committee. We lost 12-13.
Shocking.
And, well, it's the Republican-controlled House, so the committee is Republican-controlled. But there are a couple of Republicans on the committee who have supported marriage equality and who claim that they are for passing a bill like this. But this one wasn't proposed quite the right way. It wasn't really germane to what it was being attached to.
You have to send a certified or registered letter. All right.
At least in Fort Lauderdale, you get a second chance at it.
Oh, yeah. They're going to have a hearing about that. Yeah. All right. Stay on politics.
Okay.
So Massachusetts. Out lesbian Maura Healey is the Democratic nominee for Attorney General, and out gay Steve Kerrigan is the nominee for Lieutenant Governor. Both would be firsts.
Well, this is the interesting thing. She would be the first out lesbian, gay state attorney general in the United States. He would be the first out gay lieutenant governor. She, who people love, was opposed by the entire Democratic establishment in Massachusetts, including Deval Patrick, the governor, and the mayor of Boston, and all the Democratic establishment had some other guy who they were behind, some guy named Tolman. And Maura Healey ran this independent, progressive campaign as an out lesbian, and she won. And this is fantastic news. She is considered really wonderful, and people look forward to having her as the Attorney General. Here in New York, the insurgents against Governor Cuomo and others had, pretty good showings, but they didn't win. But in terms of gay-related stuff, we told you about a city council member named Fernando Cabrera, who's an evangelical minister, pro-Uganda in terms of their anti-gay stuff, and he lost big to a guy who's great for us, a guy named Gustavo Rivera. Yeah, and I'm not a big fan of our Governor Cuomo, but what I do appreciate is that he supported Rivera, the pro-gay guy, in this primary and rejected Cabrera, and said that Rivera was needed in the state Senate for support of the Gender Non-Discrimination Act, which he expects to come up in this year, and the other things.
I'm not going to attempt to explain New York politics in the little time that we have. But an upstate Republican named Senator Mark Grisanti, who voted for same-sex marriage, who got reelected after that in 2011, but he lost this time to a conservative challenger, which actually gives the Democrats a better chance of picking up the seat because it used to be a Democratic seat.
Speaking of politics, what do you suppose is the gay angle on the conviction of Virginia ex-Governor Bob McDonnell?
I don't know.
And he was very homophobic, and
Yes.
he tried to make his wife the guilty party, and he's just a sleazeball. Well, it turns out that he has been, during the trial, living with a priest who pled guilty to a misdemeanor when he was caught having sex with a man in a car.
Well, who was the candidate? I didn't put this down, but who was the candidate? Who was it? Was it a Democratic candidate somewhere who found out an actor in one of his ads had been arrested for something like that? Did you read this story this week?
It sounds vaguely familiar.
He pulled
I'm
the
sorry.
ad.
People are so touchy. The White House has appointed legendary out lesbian Megan Smith as their chief technology officer and assistant to the president. She graduated from MIT with big technology degrees. She was the CEO of Planet Out, which was the big gay internet company.
And she worked at Google.
She was a vice president at Google. She worked at Apple early on. That's a big deal to have Megan Smith be the White House chief technology officer. And they also appointed another guy who's going to be in charge, another gay guy who's going to be in charge of internet policy and universal access and stuff like that.
And at the Department of Justice, out gay Stuart Dellery was appointed to the number 3 post as the acting associate attorney general.
He replaces Tony West, who everybody adored and thought was this great guy. But Tony West, early on, was the one who wrote the anti-same-sex marriage briefs.
Somebody had to do it
For the Obama administration.
That was their position.
Well, it was horrible.
Yeah.
You'd read these briefs, and they were all about things like procreation, and there was Tony West's name on it, and you think, what the heck is going on
in New
here?
York, Governor Spitzer, Mayor Bloomberg, both said they were for same-sex marriage and did the same thing in their briefs.
Well, and
defending the law.
then they switched when the administration decided to change its position. Then Tony West's name was on the good briefs.
When I was in speech and debate, I was not a debater, but I knew them, and they had something called two-man switch, where you would actually switch your positions and argue the opposite of what you were for, or whatever.
It wouldn't make me sleep better at night.
No.
LGBT activists protested outside the White House this week on the president's announcement that he was going to delay immigration reform until after the midterm elections. LGBT people trying to gain asylum in this country or emigrate are in particular danger, and this is a very gay issue.
The Williams Institute, which researches LGBT stuff, says that voter ID laws, which are especially hurting people of color, pose barriers to more than 24,000 transgender voters when they try to go to the polls. Another reason to oppose those things.
And the big headline in transgender news this week is Chad Griffin, executive director of the Human Rights Campaign, going to the big annual Southern Comfort Conference in the South and doing a mea culpa. HRC has done wrong by the transgender community in the past, and I am here to formally apologize. And he went on at some length about that.
Okay.
Well, if I didn't find him often disingenuous, I'd be more impressed. But here's the other thing he said, which we have to hold him to. In the next Congress, HRC will lead the campaign for a fully inclusive, comprehensive LGBT civil rights bill. Right. Employment, housing, public accommodations, credit, federal funding, and education.
That's what we've been fighting for.
Absolutely, and trying to get rid of this very limited and bad and backward Employment Non-Discrimination Act. But it's a little confusing because in his speech he also said something about fighting for an inclusive ENDA, and then he went on to say we're fighting for this comprehensive bill.
Well, here's the thing, folks. You're sitting out there in Mississippi or Alabama or a place that doesn't have a statewide bill, and you're saying, I need that federal bill. But I would say this. You need to fight on your state level to get a good, solid legislation. You don't want a federal bill that is going to make all these carve-outs that is not going to protect a lot of people in your state, and it's going to lose the principle of LGBT equality.
It is, and then it's going to be used as a roadblock to anything more comprehensive.
Right.
And the bills that have been passed at the state level in about half the states are far more comprehensive than anything that
Except
is
in New
currently
York.
proposed.
But we don't have transgender rights statewide.
No, but we do have a sexual orientation non-discrimination bill that protects public accommodations and housing and everything else.
But I leave town.
Yes.
And the St. Patrick's Day parade, the anti-gay parade, which you talked about at length last week,
Yes.
says they're going to admit a gay group, but it turns out to be a bunch of corporate stooges. I'm going to say that, who made this side deal. So there was a press conference this week, which Ann and I attended and participated in, where we're all calling for an Irish LGBT group to be allowed in the parade.
Yeah.
Not just a corporate group, which doesn't even have gay in its name. So now the Catholic League is a right-wing group that's threatening not to march over this, and some conservatives are attacking Cardinal Dolan for giving this his blessing.
Couple of quick notes. Sorry to see that the National Gay and Lesbian Task Force and the Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation, GLAAD, immediately when the supposed deal was announced, said, oh, good, now we want to apply to march. It's an Irish march. Stay out of it.
Yeah, exactly.
So we wrote them a letter saying, you have no idea what this parade is about. You're not appropriate in it. Support the application of the Irish groups. The South Asian Lesbian and Gay Association showed up at the Indian Day parade last week and were welcomed. And we're protesting the recriminalization of homosexuality in India.
Well, I mean, it was a long fight to get them in the parade. Actually, they were excluded at one point. Christine Quinn played an instrumental role in making sure they got back a couple of years ago.
I want to remind people why this fight is still going on and what happened in 1991, the 1 year when an Irish LGBT group, ILGO, the Irish Lesbian and Gay Organization, was brought into the parade in a compromise worked out by Mayor Dinkins and one faction of the Ancient Order of Hibernians. It's a little couple-minute clip by our friend Lisa Guido, who's helped us on a lot of video over the years. Take a look at this.
Get used to it! We're Irish! We're queer! Get used to it! We're Irish! We're queer! Get used to it! How are you going to use the AIDS? How are you going to use the AIDS?
Every time I heard a boo, if anything, it strengthened my resolve. It convinced me that this was the right thing to do. Because most people in our town are good people.
That was Mayor Dinkins' finest hour, by the way. Standing up on that.
It was, and his people said afterwards that he was reminded of marching in Selma when they were.
Birmingham.
they were throwing bottles at the marchers. So
people were vicious. We should say that over the years, there's been protests every year, and in recent years, kids come along. You saw a lot of kids booing there.
Yeah.
Kids come along and pick up the signs. They think it's outrageous that
Times
we can't
have
march.
changed, and the parade committee wants to get past this, but they think they're going to do that by inviting this NBC group in, and it's not a good compromise. So we're gonna continue to protest and continue to ask politicians to stay out of the parade.
Let's talk about some people who passed this week. Of course, you all heard about Joan Rivers. She had a huge gay following, as I learned in reading Facebook posts and everything else and articles.
She had a huge following, period. This has gone on for a couple of weeks now. I like Joan Rivers, but I am shocked at what a big story this has been on an ongoing basis every day.
The Gay Men's Chorus sang at her funeral. Hey, big spender.
Look, she made a lot of bad gay jokes, a lot of jokes at our expense that were tough to listen to sometimes, but she also had tons of gay staff, tons of gay friends.
Margaret Cho said she put the fun back in funeral. And Judy Gold wept. And John Waters wept.
I think we all got over the bad early jokes. I was a big fan of...
The bad early jokes? What about the bad late jokes about, like, all Palestinians should die?
Well, that wasn't a joke.
No, I think she... Oh, no. Because
watched
no, wait a
fashion.
minute. Let me finish that thought.
Okay.
Because I think later in life, she just wanted to be relevant. So she tried to be as outrageous and offensive as she could. And if you didn't like it, she said, F you.
Yeah.
And that was her style at the end. And
It was tough, but she also could be hysterically funny. I watched Fashion Police every week because I thought it was hilarious. But her co-hosts on there were often cringing and doubled over in laughter and embarrassment. But we have a picture of her, I don't think we've shown it, maybe we did, on the cover of Frontiers magazine in 1984.
That's a gay publication in L.A.
Because she was doing one of the first big fundraisers for the AIDS Project Los Angeles and the L.A. Shanti Group and Aid for AIDS. She raised $45,000 then. She was one of the founders of God's Love We Deliver. She did a lot of delivering meals to people at home. She was extremely helpful to the community. And a lot of the stories you heard afterwards were comedians who talked about how she pushed their careers relentlessly.
Women, of course, especially.
And my current favorite, Billy Eichner of Billy on the Street, and how she helped his career.
Well, she said she's very disappointed her grandson wasn't gay because who's going to want my show tunes? That's what she said.
And the one thing I would recommend is her first autobiography, Enter Talking, which is really smart and fascinating. I love that book.
Okay.
But sorry, she's gone. And then closer to home, Arturo Galster, originally from Philadelphia, had a big career in San Francisco as a drag performer. Died at
There you see him portraying Hedwig in Hedwig and the Angry Inch.
Yes. He died at age 55. He had been attacked a couple of days earlier in Dolores Park in San Francisco, viciously attacked, big head injury. But the doctors say that wasn't what killed him. He died of congestive heart failure.
Well, you don't think that contributed, that kind of stress?
Of course I do.
mean, you know.
And the police are investigating whether the attack was a hate crime. No one's sure of that yet. He was described as hilarious, ridiculous, a genius. He did films. He was very famous for his portrayal of Patsy Cline. He toured that internationally. He was in an episode of Nash Bridges. There's going to be a tribute to him next week at the Castro Theater in San Francisco on September 22nd at 7:30 p.m. September 22nd, 7:30 p.m. next weekend at the Castro Theater in San Francisco. Congratulations to Johnson City, Tennessee, a Tri-Cities area. They held their first public LGBT event, a Pride Festival. Hundreds of people, went off very well. Rutgers University has adopted a preferred name policy to allow transgender students and gender nonconforming students to make their own decisions. And they've screwed up the honor walk in San Francisco with all sorts of typos. And a couple of other sad violence news. In Memphis, Alejandra Leos transgender woman shot dead near her home. Her partner has been arrested. And a guy in Baton Rouge, Scott Rogers, was shot dead by his son-in-law, who, it turns out, was also his lover.
God.
Yeah, it's sad. And there's a fight going on between the Archdiocese of New York City and the Archdiocese of Peoria over the body of Fulton Sheen. Peoria wants it returned there. Cardinal Dolan won't give the body to Peoria.
I don't usually use this term, but Fulton Sheen was a big queen. I mean, a friend of mine worked at Brooks Brothers, and he said Fulton Sheen was the most famous television personality of the 50s. At one time, he had the top-rated television show on television. He was a Catholic bishop. And Sheen comes into Brooks Brothers with a guy on each arm and says, "Boys, whatever you want."
On that note, we'll turn to international news.
Well, and I start with this horrible story out of Guildford in the United Kingdom, in England. We have a picture of a 25-year-old man, Christopher Bridger, won the trust of women over time by pretending to be gay and then raped them, saying to them right after he did it, "I just want to like girls," as if they're going to forgive him for this. In one case, getting the rape victim to comfort him. He allegedly assaulted 3 women, including a lesbian whose partner was asleep in the bed next to them. I mean, the judge called him mean, wicked, and cowardly. They trusted you in situations they would not have allowed a heterosexual man, and you told everyone you were gay. Awful.
Terrible. He's been sentenced to 12 years in prison. In Malaysia, the cops have conducted a raid at what's called a budget hotel. They arrested 6 straight couples for adultery and close proximity, but they arrested a young lesbian couple because they found a dildo in their room.
And it's the first time that a female couple has been arrested under Sharia law, and these are actually called the religious police.
These women face a possible 3 years in jail, 6 lashes with a whip, and a fine of $1,500.
Usually the penalties are higher for male homosexuality, by the way, not comparing.
Yes. I agree.
But that is Sharia law.
In Egypt, 9 men arrested for debauchery because they posted a video online in April of a same-sex wedding they were at. But they took them in, they performed physical exams. What they do is examine them anally, and if they look like they've had some anal activity.
I never asked for the anal probe. It's from the movie Passion Fish. I just happened to see it this morning.
But they got cleared.
Well, they got cleared, but here's the thing. Yeah. Same-sex relations are not criminalized in Egypt. But gays are prosecuted for this debauchery charge or shameless public acts.
Yeah.
I wish we could punish shameless public acts. We'd lock up half the Congress. Yeah. But it's not a good situation there.
In the Gambia, the parliament there has passed a new law penalizing aggravated homosexuality.
That's having gay sex more than once.
Or having it if you're HIV positive.
If you have it once, it's 14 years in prison. And this applies to women and men.
Yeah, this one is life in prison. We're waiting to see if the president signs the bill, but since he has called homosexuality, the greatest threat to humankind
He's
or
a
something.
Bad guy.
Yeah, we expect him to sign it.
Greece has delayed its vote on civil unions. Protests ensued. The European Court found that Greece discriminates versus gay people.
Amazing, yeah. In Israel, Mickey Goldstein, 49 years old, first out gay conservative rabbi, has gotten a job at a synagogue there, and he welcomes everybody, and he's quite outspoken about rejecting the bigotry of Orthodox rabbis. I was a little surprised at that.
And the big news, of course, is from Finland. We have a picture here. Sales of Tom of Finland stamps, postage stamps, are breaking all records. So what gay erotic artist could they hire here to...
Robert Mapplethorpe. But the sales of those stamps...
Save the post office.
A lot of the sales are in the United States and the United Kingdom.
Okay. Oh, God. These little islands in the Caribbean used to have stamps of Jackie Kennedy and Jack Kennedy. They used to sell them all the time.
Princess Grace.
Right.
Update on a story from last week. The Congo, Christina Fontes has been released. She's the one who is originally from the Congo, went to Great Britain, has a girlfriend who is an anchor on the BBC or Channel 4 or something, who was begging for her release, and now she has been released. The British officials helped. She was being held prisoner by her mother, who took away her passport and was trying to get her converted back to heterosexuality or to it. In Italy, a court has, for the first time, allowed the adoption by a lesbian of her partner's biological child. Italy's a little behind the times of the rest of Europe. This is a big deal.
The closer you get to the equator, it seems.
But closer to the equator, in Lima, Peru last week, there was a conference of 300 LGBT politicians, activists, workers from around the Caribbean and Latin America, although not that many from the Caribbean. And HRC is asking Secretary of State Kerry to appoint an LGBT global rights advocate.
AIDS news.
Yes.
Well, you know, the LA AIDS Healthcare Foundation is conducting an actual public campaign against PrEP, pointing out low effectiveness is linked to low adherence. Duh. I mean, come on. We already knew that, especially in Africa. Well, we're not talking about that. So, and they oppose it as a government-sanctioned community-wide public health intervention and say it could be a public health disaster in the making. I mean, I think they're fear-mongering. What they should be doing is an ad campaign encouraging adherence.
Exactly. or encouraging those who are non-adherent to condoms to use them.
Do something positive to stay negative.
Yeah. Oh, there's a thought. Several stories here. In New York City, we've been talking about how Gilead is making a drug, $1,000 a pill to treat hepatitis C, and you need to take 84 of them. So the price of this treatment is $84,000.
Unless you go to India, where it's $900 for the whole course of action, and you could have a vacation there. Though you could certainly afford one. You'd be saving $81,000.
Medical tourism. So ACT UP and Vocal and a couple of other groups went to the Palace Hotel in New York. You can see how nice that is, and held a big, noisy demonstration inside to complain about the price of Gilead's Hep C drug. They have signs that say things like $1,000 per pill is
Did they lower the price?
evil.
I'm used to ACT UP going in and they lower the price the next day.
Not right away. They're still fighting over this. And they went to another conference of theirs a couple of days later and did the same thing. In India, there are shortfalls on the free drugs being given to HIV-positive poor people there. The government says, the companies say the government's late in paying them, so they are not so forthcoming in supplying the drugs. That has to be dealt with.
In New York City, there are three new cases of meningitis among gay and bisexual men. An outbreak killed 7.
HIV-positive gay and bisexual
from
men.
2010 to 2013. I was going to say, yeah, they were HIV-positive men in Brooklyn and Queens. You are urged to be vaccinated if at risk. It's available at many pharmacies, including Duane Reade and Walgreens. Yeah,
these latest 3 cases, the guys are still alive, but they're in intensive care. At GMHC next Wednesday, the 17th at 6:30 p.m., there is going to be a panel discussion of long-term survivors called We Aren't Dead Yet, What Do We Do Now? They're getting very catchy in their titles. 6:30 p.m. Wednesday, the 17th at GMHC 446 West 33rd Street on the 7th floor. Should be interesting. And a new study of 55 transgender young adults, men and women, found that a professional comprehensive puberty suppression regimen plus hormones a little later and surgery was very helpful to these kids with gender dysphoria and turned them into well-functioning young adults. So if you have a thoughtful approach early on, that can work. All right. We're going to London for theater reviews.
You know, I want you to keep something in mind when I talk about London today, because you're sitting there saying, what the hell is he talking about this stuff for? I don't have any plans in the immediate future to go, and I've never been. But if you do decide to go, think of the houses that you go into, the theaters. That's a reliable way to choose a show over there, not just like on the title or you think it sounds nice or anything. It's where you go. And the first the first one I saw was at the National Theater, which has 3 houses, and it was Medea. They say Medea. We say Medea. Let's call the whole thing off.
The continuing theme of this week's show.
That's Helen McCrory. She's a great actress. You've seen her in a lot of movies. It was done modern dress. It's, you know, this is the woman who kills her kids because her husband goes off with another woman. It's not a very nice story, but it's, you know, it's Greek tragedy. Everything is seen as inevitable. I wish they could find another way. It is coming to cinemas here. You can go to NT Live. That's National Theater Live, NT Live.
And did you
.com. And
admire this production?
I thought it was rather scorching, but it's like
play.
I don't like I don't like things like this.
Yeah.
It's just not my. But it's very well done. She's terrific.
How about Toast? Is that more your cup of tea?
Did you see One Man, Two Governors?
No.
That's Richard Bean's hit play. This is the first play he wrote when he was 18, well, about being 18, when he worked at a bread factory. And that's a character named Matthew Kelly. It takes place in their lunchroom. It sounds like some
Toast.
It sounds like some Beckett thing. But it gets spooky at one point. But it's really just about workers' rights on the job and all that kind of stuff, and it's very well done. That's at the Park Theater.
And
I went to a bunch of little theaters like the Park. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You have to tell people whether you enjoyed it.
Yeah. Here's the thing. If you want to read my full opinions on all these things, go to gaycitynews.com and you'll get my full reviews. Okay.
Or write to andyhum@aol.com. Get on our mailing list, and he will give you a link to that.
I will send you a link to the actual reviews.
Yeah.
Now, the Don Mar is also one of my favorite theaters. It's a little theater, and we get a lot of stuff from them.
Yeah.
And this was the one I was most looking forward to. My Night with Reg by Kevin Elliott, who just died a couple of months ago. This is his big gay AIDS play from 1994. Rave reviews. I'm so excited to go to this thing. And it's these old, tired jokes that gay men calling each other girly names and all that kind of stuff. And I'm thinking the boys in the band did this a lot better 30 years ago. I mean, or 20 years before that. But the picture there was of Julian Ovenden. He was the one on the right. That's one of Lady Mary's suitors on Downton Abbey. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, and then I saw and then I went to the Globe, Shakespeare's Globe, and saw the Comedy of Errors. And it's a crowd-pleasing production. Did it please me so much? I thought there was a lot of mugging in it. And I think when you do farce, you have to make the characters more believable for us to really laugh at them as much. But it's always a pleasure to be in the Globe. And then I went to the Trafalgar Studios. Martin Freeman, you know him as what is it? Bilbo Baggins, is that the name of the character in The Hobbit? And he plays Watson on Sherlock. And he was also in The Office, the British version. Well, so he plays kind of quiet, diffident characters. Well, here he's playing the complete monster, Richard III. And he bares his teeth, and it's a very chilling production, taking place in the Thatcher era. And I would recommend that.
More on that in a moment.
Now, Bring Up the Bodies. Hilary Mantel wrote these 2 Man Booker Prize award-winning books, Wolfpack and Bring Up the Bodies, about Thomas Cromwell.
Not Wolfpack.
Wolfpack, yes. That's what Wolf? Come on. What is it called? We'll go through here. Wolf Hall. Oh, I'm sorry, Wolfpack. Well, I didn't see Wolf Hall. I saw Bring Up the Bodies, which is the second part, because I couldn't get tickets to Wolf Hall. She wasn't even there.
Yeah, but I have the book. I haven't read the book, but I have the book.
Thomas Cromwell is Henry VIII's number 2. This is Ben Miles in a breakout role. He's been in a bunch of movies. I would just say we're a long way from A Man for All Seasons here, because it really gets down to the nitty-gritty of the politics of the court.
Okay.
All right. Then two more little shows and little theaters that really are terrific places. One is called Oh, the Humanity and Other Good Intentions by Will Eno. He did The Realistic Joneses on Broadway. I like that. This is at the Tabard Pub Theater. It's another great ensemble directed by Paul Lichtenstern. That's Joseph Stevenson there in the picture. It's about how we might sound if we stripped ourselves of our myths. The characters just kind of spill out their guts in a very conversational way, all taking place in a photo studio, monologues. I liked it a lot. And this final thing is at the Finborough Theater. The Finborough is another great small theater, a pub theater. This is called The Flowers o' Edinburgh. I'm trying to say that right. It's a 1948 play by Robert McClellan in the Scots language. Scots is spoken but still by 1.5 million people there. It takes place in the mid-1700s. It's about people who are deciding whether to switch to standard English in the mid-1700s because they want to get ahead in the whole society. And so it's in Scots. I didn't understand half the words, but I very much enjoyed the play. It's a great comedy.
I didn't even try Train Spotting.
Oh, you need subtitles. Oh, and I can't review Charles III because I saw the preview, but I liked it. But I'm telling you, I think it's a very good show.
You would suggest people see it.
This is about Charles becoming king.
Okay.
By the guy who wrote Cock, Bartlett.
Okay. Before we get to the other British news you bring us, let's congratulate Lily Tomlin, who is the first out lesbian to be awarded Kennedy Center honor. A national award, lifetime contributions to American culture through the performing arts. I've never been particularly impressed by these, but I'm glad she won it. And I went through the entire history of the awards and found the closeted lesbians who won it, like Katharine Hepburn, Julie Andrews, Mary Martin, and Dolly Parton. But at least a dozen out gay men, starting with Tennessee Williams, who was the second year, I think. But Lily Tomlin's great, and it's
and that's
great
going to take place December 6th and broadcast on December 30th.
Yeah, I also caught on Showtime the documentary I Am Divine. About Divine. It was
my
fascinating.
twin. Yeah. October 19th, we share the same birthday.
Oh, well, it was terrific. It was a terrific documentary, and I'd recommend that to people who have Showtime. I Am Divine.
There's a documentary about Little John Basso, who was portrayed by Al Pacino in Dog Day Afternoon, the real character. It's called The Dog, and it's on iTunes and Amazon now. A viewer, Marlon, says it's a very interesting look at the post-Stonewall movement and how activists embraced and then distanced themselves from him, also providing a rare portrait of struggles of transsexual people at the time.
I should also say, since I mentioned Tennessee Williams and the John Waters star, Divine, that there's been a John Waters Film Festival at the Film Forum last week and this coming weekend through I'm sorry, I'm moving on from the John Waters to Tennessee Williams films at the Film Forum, starting September 26th through October 6th, because on September 29th, they're running Baby Doll.
Oh, yeah.
And Carol Baker is showing up for a Q&A.
My God.
After the 8 p.m. show. That's September 29th at the Film Forum in New York. You saw this new movie, Pride.
I didn't know much about it. Peter Tatchell invited me to the premiere, and who could say no? This is a film about gay activists in London in 1984. AIDS has already gotten started, but they have time to support striking minors. They're striking across the country, and they try to find some minors who will accept their money.
Well, let's put the bigger context, which was this was all Margaret Thatcher.
Yes.
As Rit Small, Ronald Reagan shut down the air traffic controllers to keep them from.
She literally wanted to starve the miners to get back to work, and this strike went on for a year. This movie was probably the gay movie which has moved me more than any other I've ever seen, and that's saying a lot. So I was very surprised by it. We have the trailer. Shall we show it to them?
Sure.
It opens in New York on September 19th. This is not a British thing.
Your gays have arrived. Name here the group or organization you represent in this case.
Lesbians and gay support the minors.
Quite absolutely.
Now, I'm hoping you can clear something up for me about lesbians.
Not now, Gwen.
It's something I was told in the covered market. Now,
Get settled in first, shall we?
We raised this money because we want to help you.
Everything will be all right once they start to mix.
What the hell do you think you're doing?
I'm just talking to Kev about something.
Get out there and find a gay or a lesbian right now.
I don't want the wrong impression.
Right, because you're so bloody irresistible.
What I was told about lesbians can't be true, can it? You're all vegetarians.
It's embarrassing enough they spent one night on Dice Floor.
I don't mind taking more. Not the lesbians so much because of their cuisine, but I'll take an extra gay.
Mining communities are being bullied just like we are.
Without that pit, these villages are nothing. They're finished.
The gaggle of gays and lesbians has come out in favour of the miners' strike.
We've been backed up by perverts.
Every day they're out collecting for us.
What they're really doing is pushing their own agenda.
Shut her mouth or I'm gonna do it.
When you're in a battle against an enemy so much bigger, so much stronger than you, to find out you had a friend you never knew existed, well, that's the best feeling in the world.
Your van.
I'm not getting in that.
You have to stay here.
You lesbian, are you, love?
That's right. We're just off to Swansea now for a massive layers off.
You see what we've done here? By pledging our friendship, we've made history.
Sorry, this is a men only event.
Oh, don't be daft. We've come all the way from Powys.
We want to see everything, even the rubber scene.
What's this?
Don't those women ever sleep?
God, that takes me back.
Well, it says cinema September 12th, that's England. September 19th for New York. Fantastic.
And
Go see it.
Another continuing theme, they showed a dildo.
Yes.
And I also want to recommend the documentary I saw on CNN, which I think they're continuing to show, the Lady Valor, the Kristen Beck story about the SEAL, the Navy SEAL who transitioned, and that's quite powerful. And DirecTV, on which some of you are watching us right now, did an NFL promo using a gay male couple who are NFL fans. It was quite interesting.
Well, they're protesting in Dallas over Michael Sam.
Yeah.
Christians.
Oh.
They're not really Christians, though.
All
by,
right.
by the way, that movie has Imelda Staunton, Bill Nye, Patty Considine, and Dominic West in it.
Okay. Welcome back, Andy.
Thank you very much. Good to be back.
Thank you again, Chris Cooper,
Thanks for
being
watching.
here. And write to andyhum@aol.com to get on our mailing list and get a lot of this information. Thank you. See you next week.
Bye.